Let's discuss the Supreme Court briefly. Just kind of want to go over a few things. Some of these, of course, might be on the test, but I think it's just also important to know for all of us, just as a public duty type of a thing. We ought to know, things that go on. This is perhaps you could say the highest body that can make laws in the U.S. I mean, their decisions are final, and they can have huge decisions and huge consequences, good and bad, right? Or depending on how you feel, I guess. So the U.S. Supreme Court, who is the Chief Justice? It's this man right here. He is John Roberts. Okay, he was appointed by George W. He was originally appointed, he was going to replace Sandra Day O'Connor, who was stepping down, just retiring. But she had announced her retirement while they were waiting for him to be appointed. William Rehnquist passed away, and so instead of Sandra Day getting to step aside, Mr. Roberts then replaced Rehnquist and also became the Chief Justice. And Sandra Day served until the next justice was seated, who I believe was, I think it was Alito, maybe. The U.S. Supreme Court. How many women are on the Supreme Court? Oh, see, I kind of tricked you there. There's actually 3: Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor. Before them was Sandra Day O'Connor, and I think those are the only 4 women that thus far have served on the Supreme Court. You'll see these are the members of the Supreme Court. My photoshopping isn't very good, and unfortunately, when I look for photos of the Supreme Court, you'll find a little note that says they don't often sit for photos of all of them together. And so it's kind of difficult to find that. And so here's my editing. I've got old Elena Kagan in there, and I've got Sonia Sotomayor over there replacing the ones they replaced. And then I've blacked out this one, and that's because we're missing a justice right now who passed away, unfortunately, not too long ago. Okay, so at this time we've got Breyer, Thomas, Ginsburg, Alito, Kennedy, Kagan, Roberts, Sotomayor, and who we're missing is Scalia, Justice Scalia, Anton Scalia. Why I was having problems with that name, I don't know. He passed away not all that long ago, and of course President Obama has nominated a replacement. But in light of the ongoing election, the Senate, which of course is now controlled by Republicans, has refused to look at that particular nomination. They just won't even bring it to the floor for a vote. And they're going to wait until after the election. Presumably, they're hoping that somebody would win that might nominate somebody who is more conservative than the fellow who was nominated, who I think his name is Garland, if I'm not mistaken. And I think he's a well-regarded scholar, judicial scholar, but that's the way politics are. How are justices selected for the Supreme Court of the United States? And again, we're going through that. They're appointed by the President with the advice and consent of the United States. So consent meaning there has to be I think it's a supermajority. 2/3, I believe, have to vote for seating. How long is the term of a Supreme Court justice? They can, if they choose, serve for life. Okay, no obligation to step down. There are procedures, I believe, if they become unable to continue their duties and don't step down. If they were to become disabled in some fashion, let's say dementia set in or something like that. I believe there's procedures to have them removed, but they're fairly complicated and not used very often. I don't think there's been but a handful of justices through the years, through the history of the U.S. that have ever been removed from the Supreme Court involuntarily. Montana Supreme Court, at least until the election, because we do have an election coming up, and I cannot name, that guy's John Warner, and I only know that because he's from Havre originally. There you go. quick one on the Supreme Court. Hopefully it be helpful in regards to the upcoming test.